Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Hyperconscious Podcast. Alan, what is hyperconscious?
Once you understand why something is the way that it is, now you have the power to change it. Great conversations with great people and great questions are the keys to the kingdom of unlocking your consciousness.
Every single action that you do starts as a thought. When you control the way you think, you will control the way you act, and you will control the way you live. That is hyperconscious. Geographically? Geographically. This is cool. So I would say make sure that pretty face is showing.
Yes, true.
They're going to want to see that thing. They're going to want to see that thing, Alan. That face. You good? Ready? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another very special, as always, episode of the Hyperconscious Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our latest Small Talks episode where we talked all about the word shame. Alan and I clearly learned a lot in that episode. We were doing a lot of soul searching. Contemplation. Today we are going to do a scratching the surface.
I drank water the wrong way.
You need the Heimlich?
I think we'll be okay.
I'm just going to wait till this storm passes.
Might be a minute.
We good?
Yeah.
We are going to, I also screwed up scratching the surface as you said that. Scratching the surface, we are going to do an episode on raising your standards. So if you raise your standards, you will, by default, change your life.
Yes, I just swallowed water the wrong way.
The wrong
I very much apologize. I am a little bit struggling here, but first I want to give you a friendly reminder.
Yes.
To go
this
to
might be, guys, this might be the last thing he says. He might die right here, and this is going to be the last thing he says.
This could be it right here. Go to the hyperconsciouspodcast.com, click on join hashtag hyperconsciousnation. The morning minutes are going to kickstart your days off right every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Imagine running around a track. How do you know that you're staying within the lines? The goal of these morning minutes is to keep you focused on the right stuff on the day-to-day, the week-to-week basis toward your goals and dreams. Get on that mailing list, folks.
My goodness. I was thinking of something today that has to do a little bit with, I guess, maybe not standards, maybe more with habits, but your standards and your habits are kind of
Connected.
Yeah, they're one and another, right? So I was thinking of something today. My clients have been killing it, and they're getting out of their comfort zones.
Right.
Now, that might seem like a habit. So what'll happen is somebody will get out of their comfort zone. They'll say, oh, wow, that was amazing. It wasn't as bad as I expected. Now, the problem is you've gotten out of that comfort zone. Now you have to do it again. And you have to do it again. And you have to do it again. And then you have to pick something that you're still scared of and do that. So this is a game that goes on and on and on forever.
Right, because what was once outside your comfort zone now becomes your comfort zone.
Right.
And then you have to do it again.
You have to do it again and again.
And expand outward. Yep.
So you build in that habit. So getting out of your comfort zones is a habit. Now, one way to make sure your habits stay in your life is to attach them to your standards.
Exactly.
And I think that there's this fine line where people say, like, okay, if you know somebody, or maybe you are guilty of this, and again, this is nothing against you, this is something that I think a lot of people do. Some event will be coming up, and they'll say, oh, shit, I got 30 days, I got to get in shape. I got to get in shape because there's a reunion, or there's a wedding, or whatever it is. Right? And
springtime.
Yeah, whatever it is. Now, the problem is, for the previous 335 days of the year, you weren't living up to the standards that now you have to meet.
Yeah. Right.
And that's something I've always said. I've always said this. A lot of people focus on getting in shape in 30 days. I work out all year, so I can take 30 days off if I want to. And that's the only difference.
Right.
The difference is my standard for fitness is higher than most people's. And that's why my habits regarding fitness are higher than most people's. That's why it seems like I'm unbelievably dedicated. We were talking to our good friend Mark Metry at our coffee and gym session the other day.
Mark Metry.
Mark Metry, our boy. And he was asking me about like what do I do in the morning and,
Yep.
and my morning rituals, and I roll out and all those things. And he said, like, most people don't do that. Like, there aren't a lot of people that do that every day. And I'm thinking to myself, oh wow, I don't really think of it that much. Like, it's kind of normal to me, but that's because that's my standard.
Right.
That's my standard. It's Warren Buffett's standard to make X amount of millions every day. That's what he does.
Right.
That's his life now.
Yeah.
And we always say this, guys. We always say what you do on a daily basis becomes normal, no matter what it is. Your standards are very similar. Now, let's just paint a picture here. An alcoholic, somebody who becomes an alcoholic, the first day they start drinking, their standard is not to become an alcoholic.
Oh, of course not.
Their standard is whatever it was yesterday. Like, that was their standard. Now, okay, I had a drink. I enjoyed that. Maybe I'll have a drink tomorrow.
Right.
And the problem is your standard mirrors what you do every day.
Your new normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, becomes, okay, maybe it was 1 beer at first, then 2, then 4, then 8. Eventually you're drinking you quote-unquote excessive amount when originally you only... That's why I think... A lot of people say, oh, it's just 1 cigarette or it's just 1 beer. No. It's a behavior that might become a habit that might change your life.
Yeah.
And so that can go positive or negative. So I prepared for this episode. There's a couple different things I want to say. Number one is...
I didn't set the timer. I'm the worst.
Oh, let's set that thing. See, Kevin has low standards for setting the timer. Tony Robbins is what I would argue the king of standards. He's the one who says, if you want to change your life, raise your standards. And I know that that's not sexy, and this is what he says, but it's true. So there's a lot of different ways you can change your standards, and that's what we're going to talk about in this episode. But first, I want to start with a quote. Tony Robbins says this: first of all of your results, in other words, the outcomes you see in your life, are actually a byproduct of your standards. So, for example, for me, going to the gym every single day is a standard. My physique is a byproduct of that standard. So if you want a desirable physique, you must also want the standard, in other words, the thermostat set point associated with that. So demand more from yourself than anyone could possibly expect of you. That's one of my favorite quotes by Tony Robbins that I actually write on my flashcard very frequently. I have a quote that I live by or try to write down and live by every single day. That's one that constantly comes up. Another one is... failure will never overtake me if my desire to succeed is strong enough. No, not desire, determination. Failure will never overtake me if my determination to succeed is strong enough. So in terms of raising your standards, there's several ways you can do it, and I wrote down several different things. One of them is mentors. One of them is masterminds, which you just mentioned, Mark Metry.
Mark Metry!
Another one is deep emotional pain. We'll get into that.
Oh, yeah, Alan loves pain.
Right? The other one is clients and mentees, because if you're leading by example, you better be holding yourself to a higher standard.
Yes.
And by the way, by definition, the leader in the room is the one with the higher standard. And then the last one is personal responsibility and service of something greater than yourself. Your associations. So think of standards as a thermostat in every single arena. If the thermostat is set at 75 degrees and it is 65 degrees in here, suddenly all the heaters kick on. I use this analogy occasionally. So let's say I wave the magic wand and I put 40 pounds onto Kevin right now. In 6 to 9 months from now, what's going to be the case?
I am hopefully, I would lose those 40 pounds.
Right.
That's my standard.
So Darren Hardy says this: we all have a personal development set point in every given arena. So a lot of times people talk about lottery winners who win $20 million and then 3 or 4 years later they're completely broke. How is that possible? Their personal development set point when it comes to wealth creation, money, investing is far lower than their circumstance. So the circumstance always is a byproduct of the set point. So for example, if you took someone who was overweight right now and you took off 50 pounds and you didn't change their standard or their habits, in 9 months, opposite of Kevin, they might be overweight again. So this is the fascinating thing. Sometimes our talent will take us places where our character can't sustain. In other words, I'm going to say this. I think this is important. I have a mentor who just bought a car that is extremely expensive, and this mentor of mine never really cared much about cars. What I found most fascinating about this is that the car that he just bought is a car that most people spend their whole life desiring, but it's actually a byproduct of something else that he cares about. My mentor doesn't care about cars, but he cared a lot about wealth creation and the mastery of that craft, and therefore he's able to afford the car, whereas someone who only cares about the car and not the mastery, not the personal development set point, would never be able to get the car. I found that incredibly fascinating.
I think that, if your goal is to get like me, then you're not going to have the standard. Because the thing is, my standards are not so I can get like me. My standards are so I can be the best person in the world at what I do.
Right.
Right? So, the problem is they just haven't caught up yet. And that's the only difference. You have to shoot. Your standards have to be further than you are, further than you want to be. Again, we always say, I may never be the best podcaster in the world. How would they even rate me the best
Right.
How would this ever be the best podcast in the world? I don't know.
It's the desire
Exactly.
and the pursuit.
It's what, see, this is what I love. I think you told me this. I don't know if it was, I'm sure it was maybe Tony or Darren, but it's not what you do, it's who you become.
Yeah.
That is what this is all about. That's what this entire episode is about. Who you become is a reflection of your standards.
Your self-standards.
Yeah, your habits and your efforts.
Right.
That's it. That's who you become is what you do, daily. But what you do daily is who you become. It's such a crazy thing to me.
So I'm going to hammer a bunch of questions at Kevin like we did in the last episode. And I want to really hear his take on these, because the more we become aware of what standards are and how to leverage them, the better off we're all going to be.
I feel like I am going to... I haven't butchered a question
in a minute,
so I feel like it might be coming.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Sounds
I feel
good.
like it might
Are
be
you
coming.
nervous?
No.
You should be.
No, I'm
no,
not
no,
nervous.
I'm kidding.
I'm the one who edits
all right,
these.
4 questions.
Hey, I'll make it sound perfect.
Yeah, right. Right. Number 1, we don't edit. Well, I shouldn't say we never do. Right. Sometimes I say things I shouldn't, right. And speaking of that, we might have to edit something a little later. Number 1, do you know what I'm referring to?
Of course I do.
Yeah, right.
Of course I do, man.
Oh, we have fun.
Yeah.
Okay, for the listeners,
yeah.
Number 1, what are standards in your opinion?
Oh my goodness. Okay. A standard is an expectation that you set for yourself personally. It does not matter for other people. It is it's an expectation of self.
Right.
Yeah, you are capable. It's what you're capable of.
Right.
Yeah, that's a standard.
Okay. One thing that I want to say about that, great leaders, in my opinion, have ridiculously high expectations of themselves, but they don't impose those standards on other people. In other words, they understand that their standards aren't someone else's. Like, Kevin might think he's out of shape right now. We talked about that before this episode, but for someone else, that might be their dream physique. It's just a reflection of where you are right now and where you want to be. And the focus here should be the pursuit of higher standards, not necessarily the outcomes.
Absolutely.
Okay, number 2, what makes the difference in people's standards, in your opinion?
Goodness.
Your humble opinion.
I would say a couple things. Well, I would say their macro goal. So if you want to be the greatest natural aesthetics male physique model of all time, I think
he always butchers it.
I don't know. It's too many words in a row, man. You're going to have to do things. Right. Your standards are going to have to be higher than 99% of people's, including myself.
Right.
Right. Like, I do a lot of things. I still foam roll more than you, which is unacceptable.
Currently,
which
at
is
the
unacceptable.
time, that is unacceptable.
But think about that.
I feel shame.
Think about that. Like, I want to be one of the best speakers in the world. I want to be able to coach the most successful athletes in the world. Mm. That is going to force me to raise, create, and uphold the standards that I think that it will require to get me there. Now, if say, for instance, you don't ever go to the beach and you don't care about what you look like versus somebody who wants to be the best in the world, you're going to have far lower standards.
Right, by default.
Yeah.
And that's the
Why would you do something for no good reason?
Yeah, you wouldn't.
You wouldn't, right? It's not what you have to find out what's worth the pain.
You have to want my standard more than you want my physique. I think we make a mistake. I'm going to use this real quick. The iceberg. I keep using this.
Oh, yeah, it's your favorite.
Right.
It is.
The tip of the iceberg is only someone's results. So if you were to see Kevin's physique and be inspired by that, that's great. But what's underneath that iceberg holding it up? You may want Kevin's physique, but do you also want a foam roll every day for 30 minutes in the morning? Do you also want to track your calories every single day? Do you also want to train for strength every day? Or how many days a week do you go to the gym? The point is you have to want the physique is only a byproduct. The tip of the iceberg that you're seeing is only a byproduct of other things deeper that are holding it up. And that's our goal on this podcast, is always to make you aware of the iceberg underneath that's holding up the results that are so inspiring.
You ever seen the show Hoarders? You ever seen that show, Hoarders? So basically, like, people that, this room would be filled with maybe like magazines, or hoarders have trouble letting go of old things. Right? So like they would keep those boxes from the lights. They just would, because maybe one day I'll need it. Right? It's a thing. It's a legitimate psychological thing.
Yeah.
Now the thing is, like, you see that show and you think to yourself, literally, Alan, there would be a path just wide enough for us to walk through to get out of this room.
Okay.
You think to yourself, how does that ever happen?
Right.
It doesn't happen in a day. Your standards, it becomes normal, and then your standards go a little bit less and a little bit less and a little bit less.
Right.
How does extreme obesity happen?
I know it doesn't. It happens one cheeseburger at a time, or whatever.
Yeah,
one
in most
day
cases,
at a time.
it catches up, and your standards get to a certain place,
Right.
and then you don't ever face the fact that you don't even think anymore about, like, what are my standards regarding fitness?
Right.
You don't necessarily think, because
Am I living up to my potential?
You feel so far behind.
Right.
That
And then
your
it becomes
standards
overwhelming.
are now to stay alive, or your standards are now to buy clothes that fit, or whatever it is.
Right.
That's the thing. Like, our main focus is on our standards, because our main focus is on our macro life, on the goals we want to achieve. And I've said this before. I think a lot of people get caught up in their lives, and they're just treading water, and they're not able to swim. So when you're just treading water, you don't care about your standards. You care about survival. You care about tomorrow. You care about feeling better. You care about the wedding that's coming up. Like, that's the thing. I think the biggest...
how do we shift that?
You have to set goals.
You have to set goals.
You have to set goals. Why was I in the best shape ever for my show? Because the standard was, I have to work out 6 days a week. I have to do this. I have to eat this amount of calories. I have to do this amount of cardio.
Right.
That was my standard. My standard for living in those 3 months was that of an exceptional athlete.
I'm so glad you just mentioned that, because I prepared on this episode, and I have on my flashcard written right here, your associations are going to be the greatest determining factor of your standards. And I wrote a quote, your standards come mostly from those you most closely associate with. And I remember when you were in show prep, you had a coach, Justin. Mm-hmm. And I remember you used to think you work hard in the gym until you worked out with him.
Oh, yeah.
And then you realized that you ain't.
I've never worked out with anybody who works out remotely as hard as him.
Okay, so Kevin, let's say your standard just for measurement here was a 5 compared to Justin. But you didn't know Justin yet. So to you, your 10 is a 10. You've never met someone who works harder than you, right? And this is why ego is so dangerous. I remember before I started working out with Kevin and Matt, I thought that I was working out really hard by myself. And when I would work out with other people, to be completely honest, I would think, oh, wow, I'm working way harder than they are. Like, this isn't sustainable. I think I get better workouts alone. Do you remember me saying that? Mm-hmm. I get better workouts alone. That was the story that I was telling myself. That's not true. The truth is I get better workouts working alone when I'm working out with people who have lower standards than me. The truth was, when I got in the gym with Kevin and Matt, I realized very quickly that they work just as hard as me, if not harder, and they upped my standards. So before Kevin met Justin, let's say he was a 5 and Justin was a 10 in terms of standards for training in the gym. Kevin thought his 10 was a 10 until he met Justin, and then he had to go, oh, wow, I'm not working as hard as I could be. Now you have to be hyper-conscious enough to know, okay, Justin wants to be the best in the world at bodybuilding on the Olympia stage. Kevin doesn't want that, therefore he doesn't necessarily have to be as crazy, as dedicated in that arena. But here's the one thing I want you to realize. Every result in your life, myself included, Kevin included, is quite literally a byproduct of our standards in a given arena. So at one point, maybe it was okay for me to have 5 beers on a weekend. Now, because my fitness standards are so high, that is a something that I no longer do frequently because I know the downside of it and I have a higher standard. Now, that doesn't say I don't fall off every now and then, weddings, things like that, but I usually get right back on track because I have a bigger reason, a bigger goal than most people. I often say this, like, if you don't want to be the greatest natural aesthetic men's physique fitness model on the planet, then there really isn't as big of a downside for you to drink 5 beers. For me, there is a bigger downside. Therefore, I have more incentive not to do it. So what I want people to start doing, and what I think they should do, lifestyle design is designing your outcomes you want to consistently and sustainably produce in your life, and then deciding in advance what goals you want to achieve and then what standards will be necessary in order to achieve them.
If you want to talk about standards, like, shout out to Justin, just won, or he came in 5th place at like a very, very well-respected bodybuilding show. He's an unbelievable bodybuilder.
Right.
Like, he will be for sure he'll be on the Olympia stage, which is the who's who of bodybuilders. But you know how people do the questions? Like, they'll put up questions on their Instagram, people ask him questions.
Right.
Somebody asked him, they said, have you ever cheated on your diet? Like, even an extra scoop of peanut butter. And he said, no, never once have I ever. His standard is so unbelievably
That's insane.
high.
That's
he said,
insane.
if the day I have to do that, the day I do that is the day I don't belong as a bodybuilder anymore. His standard is unbelievably high. His standard of fitness is higher than anybody's I've ever met.
Right.
By far.
Right. And that's why his results will be higher.
Exactly. So I just want to bring that to, like, when you want to be the best in the world,
right.
He wants to be the best in the world. That's the level he's playing at.
Yeah.
He's never cheated on his diet, ever.
That's unfathomable to me.
Right.
I cheat on my diet.
Yeah, of course. I do too.
When Kevin told me that, I literally chose in that moment to raise my standards.
Yeah.
That's why I want you to know, even Kevin's friendship with Justin, my association, I'm 3rd generation here in terms of knowing Justin. Like, I know of him, but just hearing that, like, being around people that have ridiculously high standards.
And I haven't talked to Justin
game.
in a long time. It was just in passing I saw this.
Right.
I'm very inspired by him. I've always been very inspired by him.
Right.
And it's just...
He's raised your standards.
For sure.
In fitness?
Absolutely.
More than anyone else?
Probably, man.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Probably.
Nate Smithson, for me, is that way.
Yeah.
His standards are unbelievably high on the pillars and all of that stuff. And it's... I want to say this real quick. For my clients, I talk about this a lot. The exercise that we just did on the website.
The top 10 associations?
Yes. Exactly. So we just did a free course, thehyperconsciouspodcast.com/free. It's actually up right now.
Yeah, I don't think... so, again, I don't know how it's going to work. We're creating a new system now where we're only going to have 3... We're going to have 3 of our courses up for free.
Right.
And after a week,
right.
I think we decided...
Yes.
Then one of them is going to get thrown into the vault, and then we'll put another one up as free.
Right, it's a sliding scale.
It's a sliding scale, as you would say. So make sure if you haven't checked out that free course, you check it out before it goes to the vault.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The free course is your top 10 associations, and it's based on an exercise that I do with my clients. A lot of my clients come to me and say, how are you so damn motivated in the gym? I say associations. All my friends are stronger than me. They have higher standards than me. They're in better shape than me in some cases, unless they're Kevin, in which case he's soft.
Not true.
No, I'm kidding.
Jacked.
But seriously, your associations are huge. So what I have them do is write down 2 things. We all say, I don't care what people think, but we actually do care about the people we care about. In other words, what they think. So write down the 10 people who have your heart. The 10 closest associations, family members, significant other, friends, mentees, mentors, all of that. And then I want you to rate them from 0 to 10 on, number 1, their dedication to their fitness goals. In this case, Justin would be a 10. That's Kevin's 10, okay? For me, Nate would be a 10. And by default, you and I would not be a 10 because they're the 10. Okay. Then the second thing, rate their physique. And the reason why I do this is I want my clients to really lock in on the fact that the reason they feel unmotivated in the gym is most likely because they're around a lot of people who don't care about it. Their associations are not with athletes. Now, I'm not saying to cut people out of your life. What I'm saying is maybe you need to expand your associations to include, usually with my clients, for example, I'm the 10 on their list. That doesn't mean that and I'm not a 10 on my own list because I have other associations that they don't. It's the association that's going to raise your standard.
I think standards it's got to be one of the most important things when it comes to designing a life. Like, if you're listening to this now, think of what are your standards regarding wealth?
Right.
What are your standards? And again, wealth is not a bad thing, guys.
Boop. The timer has gone off, folks. which means that we're, 30 minutes out from the end of the episode? I'm just kidding.
Big Bruins game tonight.
Right? Stanley Cup
saying?
Finals.
What was I saying?
Something, standards.
Yeah, no, right. I was definitely talking about standards because it's the episode. I think it's one of the biggest things when it comes to. Oh, okay. So,
Right.
What are your level of standards regarding fitness? What are your level of standards regarding relationships? What are your level of standards regarding wealth? And again, guys, wealth is not a bad thing. Making a lot of money is not a bad thing as long as you do the right things with the money.
Right. As long as where do you shop with your money?
Right.
Right.
Like
That's what David Meltzer
yes,
said.
I was just going to say that.
Also, if you make your money in the service of others.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah. So, like, these are the things, like, number one, have you designed a life? Like, what do you really want out of your life? Okay. Are the standards, or will the standards that you're currently living with and practicing, will they get you to that life you want?
Right.
If you want to be in shape and you're not doing anything regarding fitness standards, if you're not raising your standards in fitness, most likely nothing will happen unless it's by chance or luck. Same with wealth, same with relationships, same with love, like
Right.
all of those things.
Right.
And most success, like you said, is a reflection of standards.
Dave Meltzer said this. He said that if Jeff Bezos made $1 billion this year, they would fire him.
Right.
He has a different wealth standard. Now, was his standard always that high? No, it was over time. The
course.
frog in the pot of boiling water. That can be a good pot of boiling water or a bad pot of boiling water. Like, for example, my worst physique today is way higher than my best physique 3 years ago because I've been growing. Tony Robbins says this. He says, I can do more with my pinky now than I could in my 20s with my whole being. And what he's really trying to say is that over time, he's raised his standards by getting around more incredible people, growing, learning, and becoming more aware of what leverage points actually matter. So I'm going to ask Kevin a couple more questions. Number one, how do you personally raise your standards?
Oh my goodness! So there's a couple ways that I do it. I kind of put myself in extreme pain quite often, but I compare myself to the person I want to be. Would me right now, in my current level of standards, be able to sustain traveling once a week for an international speech, doing 3 podcasts, having the most successful people in the world as my clients, having a family,
right,
having a charity, like having all of those things? Would my standards and my habits now allow me to do so? If not, it's time for me to get, better standards.
Is that true? So, like, ask yourself those questions. Are you
right now?
Right.
No, I think.
Okay, so then what needs to change? What new habits do you need?
You and I have discussed, like,
right,
in detail. Like, we have a lot of
leveling up to do.
Yeah, there's so many things that are new to us.
Right.
Like, it's funny, man. I went to my best friend Matt. You guys have heard of him 1,000 times. His family had a Memorial Day / birthday party for his father, and I went over and I hung out with them. I haven't seen them in a couple months, but I was talking to his mom about, like, how interesting it is to, like, I thought I was going to be a podcaster, but now I'm a business owner, and now I'm a coach, and now this and this and this and this, and that's going to level up again.
Right.
If we want to stay at this level, cool. Our standards can stay exactly where they are.
Yeah.
But if we want to level up, we have to raise our standards.
You have no choice.
Yeah. So, the things.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I could go in detail, but it's everything, man. Better scheduling, better automation, making things more scalable. Like, everything has to get better.
The last question I have here that I think you'll enjoy, and this is for the listeners, but I want to ask Kevin, what can we expect from ourselves and others when we do raise our standards? Like, what are we going to get out of it?
Oh, my goodness.
Like, when you raise your standards, you will change your life. That's the name of this episode. What can they expect to start seeing happening?
All right, so I'm going to try to be as real as humanly possible. When you raise your standards, it's not all, rainbows and sunshine. There will be some things that come along with it. Very similar to what we talked about in the downsides of being hyperconscious. When you raise your standards, that's also going to shine a light on people who don't have standards as high as yours. Mm-hmm. Now, that's not a judgment.
Right.
At all. That doesn't mean you have to judge that, but you will recognize it.
And they will recognize it.
Of course.
And it'll make them uncomfortable a lot of times.
Yeah, so let's just use this as an example. If you're in a relationship with somebody, neither of you are into fitness, and all of a sudden you raise your fitness standards and you say, look, I'm going to do a fitness show.
Right.
Something I've always wanted to do. I really want to push myself. I want to see if I can keep that kind of discipline for 3 months. I'm going to do a fitness show. Cool. I think that's awesome.
Right.
But if the person in the relationship is not there with you, they're going to see your standards go way up.
And they're going to get scared.
They might get scared.
Right.
They might adopt your standards, maybe. Right?
Standards rub off.
They do.
Usually.
They do,
Yeah.
but it might be too much for them.
Right. Like you in one of your relationships, she wanted to chase her dreams
Yeah.
and you were scared.
I was scared.
Right? Because
Yeah.
she was raising her standards.
Yeah.
Right.
And I wasn't raising mine, so I was terrified.
Yep.
Yeah, so that could happen. It could be too much contrast, and if the person is insecure and self-conscious like I was, they might burn to the ground. So that's kind of a negative. But
no, stay here with me.
stay here. You don't need to travel. Traveling's for the birds.
Yeah.
California? What do you mean? There's
Yeah.
nothing special about
You have to
California.
get on a plane for that, and I'm afraid of planes.
I'm afraid of everything. That's kind of a negative, and I don't mean to be pessimistic, but that's the reality of it.
What are some positives?
Some positives. Number one, you're going to get better.
Right.
And you're going to it's interesting because
be proud of yourself.
You're definitely going to be proud of yourself, but you're also going to feel a sense of accomplishment.
Right.
Because it doesn't have to be like, okay, yeah, I want to be able to speak in various countries, but in order to do that, I have to raise my standards so I can speak on smaller stages.
Right.
So you can get small wins along the way. That's
Totally.
what makes the big win in the grand scheme of things.
And some would say that progress equals happiness.
Some would say that progress does equal
when it's
happiness.
genuine desire of the heart.
Some would say.
The one more thing. I always say that. The
yeah,
one
yeah.
more thing I want to say. Folks, one thing that is going to happen is phenomenal attracts phenomenal. One thing that I've noticed is that when I've raised my standards, I'm able to attract into my life a lot of people that I couldn't before. In other words, when I have, I mentioned my millionaire mentors, self-made, all these wonderful, they're doing philanthropic things, they're changing the world. The only reason why I'm able to sustain those relationships is because they see my potential and my standards. And in some cases, to be honest, I've lost relationships with mentors and coaches. I'll give one example. I had a coach that was world class that I lost because of my lack of punctuality. So my standard for being on time was not nearly as high as it needed to be to sustain that relationship.
Yeah.
Therefore, I lost it. Everything in your life, good or bad, is the byproduct of the standard you hold yourself to. Now, if you want to change your life, you have no choice but to change the inner game first. Change the emotional mastery, the mental strategies, the spiritual belief and imagination underneath the iceberg of the physical results that you're seeing.
Dramatic reading time.
It is dramatic reading time.
Yes.
Okay.
Is this a long one here?
No.
Because we're already at 38 minutes, I believe.
Are we? We went over today, man.
Well, then again, we had a little preamble before we started the actual conversation. I don't know.
We're a little long-winded today. We're sorry. We are sorry.
We are
Low standards on timing here.
We're sorry. Well, no, but you just hammered the questions after. I was ready to roll, and you're like, well, I'm going to ask these questions. I can't say no to questions.
No, because
That's
questions.
one thing you know
questions
about me.
change
If you
lives.
ask me questions, I gotta answer them.
Right. All right, so here we go. So this is Tim Grover, speaking of high standards.
Yes.
He is the personal trainer of Michael Jordan, Dwayne Wade, and Kobe Bryant. And he wrote a book called Relentless. This is one of my favorites. From good to great to unstoppable.
I love it.
So if you want to be unstoppable, here's an excerpt on how to do it. Okay. Because no matter what you want for yourself, whether your ambitions take you to the gym or the office or anywhere else you want to be, your ultimate power source will come from the neck up, not the neck down. In sports, we spend so much time on the physical component, training, working, pushing the human body to be faster and stronger and more resilient than most people ever thought possible. And then eventually, we get around to paying some peripheral attention to mental conditioning. That's completely backward. Excellence isn't only about hitting the gym and working up a sweat. That's the smallest part of what you have to do. Physical ability can only take you so far. The fact is, you can't train your body or excel at anything before you train your mind. You can't commit to excellence until your mind is ready to take you there. Teach the mind to train the body. Physical dominance can make you great. Mental dominance, hyperconsciousness, is what ultimately makes you unstoppable. You will never have a more powerful training tool than this. Get your mind strong so your body can follow. The true measure of an individual is determined by what you can't measure, the intangibles. Anyone can measure weight, height, physical strength, speed, but you can't measure commitment, persistence, or the instinctive power of the muscle in your chest, your heart. That's where your true work begins, understanding what you want to achieve and knowing what you're willing to endure to get it.
Powerful, Mr. Grover.
Fire, right?
I think standards, I don't really think of it. I think of it as habits. That's the way I've thought about it before, but I think the problem is I have such big macro goals that I understand my habits have to be next level.
I think your habits are a byproduct of your standards. Honestly.
Yeah.
They
I think a
become-
lot of them are just like, the gym is just a thing. I do it because I like it. You
Right.
know? Like, me and Matt, I got Matt to do some boxing the other day.
Oh,
I
nice.
love boxing. It burns fat. I get to do cardio and get ripped and have fun. It's like a win-win-win.
Right.
So my standard of getting in shape is just, it's fun.
Right.
Now, not always, guys. Trust me, I'm hungry most of the time, but that's
I'm
part
hungry
of it.
right now,
Yeah,
for sure.
well, we'll get you some food.
For sure.
Wine and ass. Good?
Should we call the ambulance?
No,
You
not,
think
well, unless
we
you
should call
unless
the
you want it.
ambulance?
Anything else?
I think
Quickly.
if
Quickly!
you take nothing else from this episode, it should be that if you want to create new outcomes in your life, start looking at people that have those outcomes and try to figure out what their standard for themselves is.
Yeah, I would say self-reflect. If your standards are not getting you to where you desire or where you see yourself going, change your standards. Change your standards. Change your life.
That's a fact.
Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed this episode. I know we were long-winded and we went over on time as we usually do. Up next, we are sitting down with Mr. Alex Hinkle. So when we were in Florida, was he a client?
Yes.
At the time? Okay, so
Still is.
He drove across the state of Florida to hang out with us.
Yep.
We did some masterminding. He had us on his podcast, Into the Think Tank.
Yep.
We hung out. We didn't get a lift with him, I don't think.
No, but I did today.
We did today.
Dude,
So,
speaking of high standards, this
yeah,
he's the inspiration.
he is a super genius, too.
honestly
super genius.
Yeah, very, very.
So
bright.
we are going to get a workout with him. He's going to come down to the studio. We're going to record an episode on him. Again, you guys liked From Ashes to Passion with Tiffany Wells. We got a lot of positive feedback on that. We're going to continue having next level guests, and we're also going to have people that are along, probably around the same area you are, or maybe a little bit further ahead, or maybe a little bit further behind. Whatever it is, I think that finding people that resonate with you guys that are going through similar experiences, that's what this is all about.
Right.
That's what this is all about.
Shout out to Tiffany about fear chasing on the airplane.
Yes, huge shout out to Tiff. She got on her first flight. She flew to, I don't know where she flew. To Colorado or from Colorado home. Either way, she was terrified. She killed it. And guys, that is the biggest thing. The biggest thing is fear. If you can get over your fear, you can literally change your life and, habits.
She literally sent a snap on her story that said, "What a magnificent view outside the window of the airplane." And Kevin and I were just talking about that. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, I think it's in the 130s. Tiffany Wells. She said her biggest fear is airplanes, but she's going to get on a plane because she has to, and she wants to travel, and she wants to
Yes.
empower women. She has a goal, macro goal, big enough that forced her to face her fears.
And raise her standards.
And raise her standards, exactly.
Yeah.
And so the view that she saw outside that plane, I was talking to Kevin, I said, when I was 7, I went to Disney World, and I got to see that view at 7 years old, so that's normal for me. For her, she never would have seen that incredible view outside the plane if it wasn't for her facing her fears and raising her standards.
Very, very proud of you, Tiff. You are killing it. That's what it's all about. It's all about getting out of your comfort zone, facing your fears, raising your standards, getting different associations, whatever it is. Whatever it is for you, that is what hyper-consciousness is. So we hope you enjoyed this. You definitely will enjoy the episode with Alex. He is a genius, and can't wait to talk to him.
And we will talk to you soon. Real quick, reach out to Kevin or myself on Instagram if you're struggling in any arena where you want to raise your standards, and we will help you do so. And most likely, you will help us raise our standards as
win,
well.
win, win, win. Ladies and gentlemen, we will talk to you soon.
Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much for listening to another episode of the Hyper Conscious Podcast.
Going hyper-conscious will absolutely change your life, because if you understand why something is the way it is, now you have the power to change it. If you going hyper-conscious with us has changed your life in any way, please share this episode with one of your friends, because the more people that go hyper-conscious, the better this world's going to be for everybody.
And if you would kindly leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, that would help us make more people hyper-conscious, and we would be greatly appreciative.
Thank you.
Bye.